afternoon, Island Council members and members of the Central Committee, Ito Charles, Saskia Matthew, Julio Every, Island Registrar Ms. Akila Livingstone, Island Governor and Chairman of the Island Council, Jonathan Johnson, members of the Executive Council, Commissioner Everton Hediger, Commissioner Bruce Zegers, Island Secretary and Deputy Island Secretary, civil servants, and to the general public, whether present here today or viewing via live stream. Welcome to the Central Committee meeting of Tuesday, September 17, 2024. Before going into the agenda points, please allow me to mention the absence of Island Council member Rolando Wilson, who is currently not feeling well and is absent with notice. Today we have 8 points on the agenda. Point 1 was the opener of the meeting, and we now move on to point 2, which is approval of the agenda. I now look to the council members for approval. We now move on to agenda point 3, which is approval of the minutes from the Public Central Committee meeting of August 27, 2024. I do mention that this will be moved to the meeting of next month as there is a delay with the minutes with notice. Agenda point 4 is citizens' right to speak on agenda points with prior announcements. I was informed that no requests by inhabitants have been received. We can therefore move on to agenda point 5. And this agenda point is question round concerning flag questions from incoming correspondence list. So we have a list of questions which is in line with Article 18 of the Rules of Procedure of the Island Council meeting. And the points are as follows. Executive Council Decision List, July 9th, 2024, 3.03, the removal of metal waste. July 2nd, 2024, 3.01, Basic Proposal Youth Council Saba. July 2nd, 2024, 3.0.5, Official Recess. June 27, 2024, 3.0.5, Part-Time Vet Assistance. July 16, 2024, 3.1.0, Development and Implementation Pest Mobile Application. July 23rd, 2024, 3.05, Additional Storage Locations, Saba Splash. July 23rd, 2024, 3.1.4, Food Security Proposal. I believe the first few points were flagged by Island Council member Matthew, so I will first go to you where you now have the opportunity to state your concerns. Yeah, do it one by one.
Good afternoon, everyone. On the decision list of July 9th, the removal of metal waste. My question is, were there no balers available in the region and training? So I noticed that was the decision made to get a baler from the Cadwell company. And has this process already started? For the July 2nd basic proposal.
So, Commissioner, you can now respond.
Okay, thank you, Chair Lady, and also thanks for the question. Good afternoon to those following via social media and those present here today. The removal of the waste, of the metal waste, is not by any means a new project. We've had experience with this in the past. I remember many years ago, a metal crusher or a grinder was brought to the island. All the metal was shredded, well, really shredded. And then the most recent time it was shipped out on a barge, but that proved to be very inefficient. You had large quantities of waste sitting at a harbor for an extended period of time. You had particles blowing into the sea. And we weren't able to make use of the space on the barge because of the bulky size of the nature of the waste. So over the years we have exhausted several potential opportunities of companies that were interested in waste in general, whether it be tires or plastics or whatever have you. But you know, it was never something that was truly dependable. They would take waste for once or twice, and then you know you wouldn't hear from them again. And the same can be said with the metal waste. You know, we've had projects before that the ship would come and the metal would be sent to Curacao. You know, that happened twice, I believe, at least during while I was a commissioner. So, you know, for us the volume is large, but in reality, on the bigger scheme of things, you know, the volume isn't that large. We've explored possibilities within the region. We know the islands surrounding us also have challenges with removing their waste. We don't have to go very far to see that. And you know, because of that, the decision was once again to use Cadwell. The baler isn't on the island yet, as it's being used for a project on Grenada. The baler that is coming is one of a mobile nature that you know can simply be hooked up to a you know, one of those container trucks and be transported to wherever it needs to go in order to better facilitate the processing of the metal. So that's the update with that, and we do expect that the baler should be here next month.
Do you have any follow-up questions pertaining to the question asked? Does anyone else have any follow-up questions pertaining to this? Okay, we can then move on to the next one. Ms. Matthew, you can continue.
On the topic of the basic proposal on the Youth Council, I noticed that in the summary, it mentioned that it was a project for a couple of years, and that would ensure that it would be more sustainable or last longer or more continuous. So just wondering if there was more information with this proposal, because it was kind of vague. There was a plan or something that maybe we could get.
Commissioner, you can respond.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon to everyone. To the question of if a plan was submitted with a proposal for Saba Youth Council, yes, that's the question. Madam Chair, a formal plan was not included in the basic proposal, and that's while the mentors have a draft to outline what they hope to achieve with the Youth Council, this draft still remains in the early stages. The goal is to develop the plan alongside the Youth Council members to ensure that their input shapes the direction rather than planning solely for them. The proposal that was submitted to the basic was to re-inform the basic that the Youth Council was going to be re-established. Once the bylaws and a more detailed plan are established, in collaboration with the youth members, this will be shared with Council once again for further approval. And when that does happen, it will reflect back in the sent to you in the decision which was sent to you.
Thank you, Commissioners. Are there any follow-up questions pertaining to this agenda item? Anyone else? Okay, Ms. Matthew, you can continue.
The last point for me was the official recess. So it was very, in my opinion, kind of vague again in the decision. So maybe this could be explained a little bit, because you kind of get the impression that the entire government building is closed for recess. And I know that's not the case, so maybe if somebody could elaborate on that a little bit.
Thank you, Island Council members. Good afternoon. As we mentioned yesterday, for in the future, you know, these type of things will be more visible to the council, where you'll see the underlying proposals from the executive council. But nonetheless, the recess, the official recess which we had this summer, this is the first time we have done it, but it is familiar on other islands, due to the fact that a lot of civil servants are taking holidays and such. So what we did is we formally proposed to implement this official recess between July the 27th and August the 27th. And a recess is a period during which regular meetings and activities of the administration are temporarily suspended, allowing officials and civil servants the opportunity to take a break for rest and reflection. This concept has long been common practice in the Netherlands and in many other islands as well, where it contributes to more efficient and considered governance. The introducing of the recess offers several advantages. First and foremost, it provides a clear and structured break from intensive work. Additionally, the recess allows them to prepare for the second half, which we are now in, of the year, returning to their duties with renewed energy and fresh perspectives. While a recess signifies a period of rest, it is essential that we are prepared for any urgent situations that may require immediate action. As we know, government doesn't shut down, so therefore it was proposed to mandate the governor and the acting governor to make decisions during the recess that are urgent and necessary for the well-being and safety of our community. And therefore we also had a mandate regulation in the decree, and that was also sent on to the Island Council, which states, the Executive Council of the public entity Saba, whereas during the summer recess there are times when the Executive Council is not full, therefore there is sometimes no quorum, and therefore the members of the council present cannot legitimately make decisions. In such a period, decisions sometimes have to be made anyway, whose effective date cannot wait until after ratification if there is a quorum, considering Article 170 of the WALBES, notwithstanding Article 9 of the Rules of Procedure for Meetings and Activities of the Executive Council, and recess periods if there is no quorum, designate the Island Governor or the Acting Island Governor to make, on behalf of the Executive Council, all necessary decisions submitted to the Executive Council. The mandated mentioned in Decision Point 1 does not apply if, in the opinion of the Island Secretary, the nature of the requested decision prevents it. This decision takes in effect from July 29th and ends on August 26th. So this is, for example, like the salary advancements and so if there's no quorum, that the Island Governor can sign on behalf of the Executive Council. And also for the civil servant apparatus, as like I said in the beginning, some are taking vacation, so urgent things are needed then, it's not possible, but it becomes more standard. So we did it this year for 4 weeks, and that's what we'll try and hold it for. So that is.
Thank you, Governor. Are there any follow-up questions?
Yeah, that's for clarity. So the official recess is for the Executive Council. Basically.
Yeah.
Are there any more follow-up questions?
Just to elaborate on the urgent cases, you have detailed exactly what those cases can be. So I just mentioned about salary advances, but
Things like that, yeah. But then there's other urgent things that we have to come back.
Right.
But we, you know, it's a recess, but then we still hear, and so we still communicate via email and stuff, and the iPads are still available.
I think the biggest thing with the recess was that the weekly base meetings weren't scheduled. But in the event that something did come up, that attention was needed, you know, all of us were readily available to, you know, come in and do whatever needed to be done. But that was the biggest thing that at least I experienced with the first ever recess was the weekly base meetings.
Because in other places it's kind of standard that you realize, you know, during the end of the year, the Christmas, New Year, and then in the European part, then it's also in May and stuff. So that our like a schedule made for the executive councils that, you know, whomever knows, and also for you as the island council, that you know not to expect decision lists for that time. So that's kind of the reason behind it.
All right, thank you. Island Councilmember Matthew, was there any more points?
Yeah, maybe just to explain, just to close it. I think where my confusion was, and the governor also read that a while ago, his explanation was the part when it says it's a period for civil servants to also take time off, so that it gets a little confusing. Because yes, of course, people take time off in July, but it's good to know. Thanks for the explanation.
Thank you. You have a next point here as well? Or that was it for you?
That's-
Okay. I now move on to Island Council Member Charles. You can now state the questions that you have.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. My first question is in relation to part-time vet assistants. And in this decision, Executive Council mentioned that it's a temporary solution via a part-time veterinarian who lives on an island. Of course, some pet owners last week want to express the inconsistency with not having a vet on island. Sometimes, especially in early situations, they have to fly out to St. Martin with their pets, or they don't know how really ill the pet is, and then it's very difficult to make a decision what further treatment they need to do. So I know there was a full-time vet at one point, no longer on island. My question is, are there plans to make this a full-time arrangement with the part-time veterinarian? Or are there plans to hire another vet in the long term?
Thank you, Mr. Charles. Commissioner Sigis.
Okay, thank you. Indeed, the person working right now is part-time. The full-time position is budgeted, and a person has been found. The ongoing negotiations with, of course, the legal position of that person, and it seems to be going in the right direction. But in any case, the idea is that the full-time position is filled before the end of the year, and to ensure that how there's a proper transfer, of the different individual cases on the island, the part-time position also continues until the end of the year, ensuring that there is a period where the two can work together, just to get familiar with the local circumstances and the individual clients, like we said, pet owners having to travel and stuff like that. There's some specific cases. So, but the idea is that before the end of the year, that full-time position is filled.
Thank you, Commissioner Sigis. Are there any follow-up questions pertaining to that point? For any of the council members?
The next point is in regards to the development and implementation of the PEST mobile application. And in this decision, Executive Council mentioned there is a plan to develop an app to be able to provide direct information to the public. This will also include the functionality to provide information when there is a crisis. My first question is, if there was a disaster, or there was or is a disaster communication app, what is the status of that application? How is it currently being utilized? What is the cost of developing a new application? And the Executive Council mentions that the core functionality will be to provide new information. What mediums will be used to provide this information? For instance, we use text, only video, voice, or a mix of all three. And follow-up question is, once the app is developed, will the Executive Council cease using other mediums such as Facebook or WhatsApp? And what other channels will the government use to provide information to the public? And by that I mean, for instance, radio, perhaps television or the internet, but what sort of channels will we use to provide information to the public in addition to the app?
Thank you, Mr. Charles. Governor, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you for those questions. Yes, as the decision is, there is a decision to develop and implement a mobile application. The new application aims to integrate the functionalities of the current government website, Facebook, WhatsApp, and the existing crisis management application into a single user-friendly platform. This approach will streamline how information is delivered to the public, especially during a crisis. The application's core functionality is to provide timely, reliable information and urgent push notifications, ensuring that the public is well informed during both regular and crisis situations. So you asked about the disaster communication. What's the status of that application? We do have a disaster preparedness app. Members of the crisis organization have full access to the app and its functionality. This allows them to access critical crisis information offline at any time. Earlier this year, the crisis checklist and contact information were updated to ensure that all the emergency support function members have the necessary tools to respond effectively in emergency situations. You asked how is being utilized. The Disaster Preparedness app is used by members of the crisis organization as a quick reference tool or a cheat sheet during emergencies. And as one of your colleagues, either council member, but also the fire chief knows, for example, for the bomb members and such, when I go on the app, it has different cheat sheets, but it also has the different plans, the ABC plans for if it's a hurricane or a or a slide or whatever, different things. It has that in that app. So we use that in the crisis management. You asked what is the cost of developing the new application. Well, as of right now, the project is still in the early stages of development and is being worked on internally. The final cost will depend on whether external developers will be needed to ensure that the application meets the variety of required standards. However, we are committed to maintaining cost effectiveness and ensuring application provides long-term value to the public. Once it is determined if part of the development must be outsourced and the final associated costs need to be determined, further information will be provided to the Executive Council. You asked about core functionality will be provided, news and information. What mediums will be used to provide this information? The application will deliver information using a variety of formats to ensure accessibility and engagement for all users. Text-based information will provide news articles, official notices, and other written content, while video will be used to support project announcements and updates, and any other additional forms of video requests. Push notifications will be utilized for urgent crisis messages, ensuring that users receive timely updates directly on their devices. This multi-format approach is designed to provide comprehensive information that caters to different communication preferences, helping to always keep the public informed. Then your next question was, after the app is developed, will we cease using mediums such as Facebook and WhatsApp? Answer to that is no. The application will be designed to complement existing communication platforms like Facebook and WhatsApp. These channels will continue to be used, ensuring that all segments of the population remain informed through their preferred platforms. The application will simply provide an additional, more streamlined option for accessing government news and information, which is especially needed due to the unreliability resulting from Facebook's updated algorithm. I think you all know better than me about Facebook, because things have changed therein. You need, as government organizations, permission and they block certain things. So that's why also the app is developed to supplement that. The next question you pose, what other channels will the government use to provide information to the public? In addition to the new application, the government will continue using several other communication channels to ensure information reaches the public effectively. The official government website will remain a key platform for detailed notices and comprehensive updates, while Facebook will continue to serve as a broad outreach tool for the community. WhatsApp will also continue to be used for quick, informal communication, providing instant updates to the public. Additionally, LinkedIn will be utilized to share information with professional audiences and stakeholders, and by maintaining this multi-channel approach, ensures that important information is easily accessible to all residents across different platforms. So you asked a number of questions, and I hope to have provided you with more detailed answers to the different questions.
Thank you, Governor. Are there any follow-up questions at this time, Mr. Charles?
Yes, Madam Chair. Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Governor. I have just a couple of follow-up questions. First is in regard to the app, the current app. So I want to thank you. I think it was a very concise explanation you gave to the answers that I posed. So I want to thank you for that. And also I think created a lot more insight into the plans regarding how this app will be used and how the public can be better informed about this information. Because I think it's important that people are informed of what their government is doing. You mentioned in regards to current disaster app that it is used, and it seemed to me primarily by the disaster team or the crisis team. But I remember when it was initially envisioned, it was supposed to be a public app. So I'm just curious whether or not it's still being used for the public. But when I realized that, when I was having writing these questions, I realized I don't even have it on my phone. And I also didn't remember what was the name of the app. So I couldn't find it if I was looking for it. So I'm just curious if in the meantime, before this app is developed, if you would want to continue informing people about this current app. That's one question. And then the second one is in regards to, you mentioned about the channels, about whether or not government will use other channels to provide information to the public, and you summarize a few other channels. But what I missed was channels that provide direct information, real-time information to the public. So for instance, radio or Facebook Live type discussions. And on other islands in the area, so I'm looking at St. Martin Station in particular, you see where people can regularly hear from members of government using these channels and live and in real time. Not necessarily they can ask questions, but they get a sense of connecting with their those persons with their leadership and get a better insight in hearing directly from those in charge about the decisions that they're making. So I'm curious if there are plans to use direct channels to inform the public about government plans.
Okay, thank you. The first one, the disaster prep app is available on the Google and in the Apple Store. It's called Disaster Prep Saba, and it does currently have the functionality. Maybe you do remember that you could update with news and such, but this is something that we want to update also in the new app. But it is available. The disaster prep is that the emergency support functions, they have more functionality, so they can see things that the general public can't see with regard to the plans, the cheat sheets and such. But it is something that is available to the wider population or wherever people may live. The second one about the other channels, it is something which we have discussed in the Executive Council, for example, after Executive Council meetings, that updates could be given via other means, be it YouTube Live or whatever, or like you said, Facebook Live. The updates could be given in that way as well, real-time updates on certain things. Because as you know, in the past, Corona was happening and we make video updates as well. So that is something that we are exploring, ways in which to give real-time updates to the community.
And is there, Madam Chair?
Yes.
And is there a timeline when the introduction of this can be expected?
Well, with CPR we're busy, so I can get back to you on the more detailed timeline.
And if I could follow up in regards to, you mentioned something, another question. I lost my train of thought there, so I will get back to you. Okay. In that regard.
Thank you, Mr. Charles. Are there any follow-up questions from the other council?
Yes, just with the information to the public, are we also thinking about press releases in that format? Are you having real-time information?
But that could be an option as well, like press release, that it give it out in different formats. So it's something we are discussing also in the executive.
Thank you, and Councilmember Everett.
I recall the question. It was about, because I see right now we're creating a lot of reliance on internet-based solutions to provide information. And then I recall just this past week, there was a little outage, thankfully not for very long, with the internet. And I'm curious how are we looking? Because that could have been a much longer outage, and then it would have been impossible to provide information. So I'm curious of what ways are we, what alternative ways of providing information are we looking at? I know you mentioned radio at one point, and I didn't hear you respond to that. So I'm just curious if we're using.
Radio is one of those that we have to discuss with the radio station as well, how to link it into the radio station. Because a lot of radio stations now are becoming more digital.
Yeah.
So this is something that I think you all discussed also with that committee that was here that does supervision of radios and televisions, in which way, because remember they also informed us of how the government could have airtime on the radio station, so to support them in that. So that is something that also we have to explore further.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Schwartz. You can now move on to your next point.
So I'll get back into the
The next one was about additional storage location from that sales storage.
Yes, so additional storage location, sales splash, and in this decision, the Executive Council mentions that the law says that at least 2,000 bottles must be stored for our community during hurricane season. I think that's a good thing, so I'm speaking that. I'm just curious though, in which law is this mandated? Because there's no mention of the legislation that regulates that.
Commissioner, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair Lady. To be correct, it's not necessarily the best law or something like that, just that was maybe wrongfully represented into that decision. However, ILT is the supervisory authority for water amongst many other key services or products that's provided on the island. And based on the water quality and capacity document that was developed with the guidance of ILT, they suggest that we should have drinking water available for 6 days in the event that there is a hurricane or something like that. So based on the calculation where it's estimated amount of drinking water used by the average person per day, during that 6-day period, it is estimated that there is a need to have 2,000 bottles during the hurricane season that's readily available in the event that it's needed.
You mentioned a document there. Would it be possible for the council to receive that document?
Sure.
Are there any follow-up questions pertaining to this agenda point?
Pertaining to this agenda point, it was specifically related to the decision, that's what I've asked anyway. And it's in regards to, there have been a few times this year where Saba Splash has announced that they haven't been able to provide water for some reason. And I'm just curious if it's always the same reason, and if it's different or it's different reasons, and what is being done to address those outages.
Yeah. Well, I believe the two main reasons were mainly the lightning strike that damaged some of the equipment, and that has since been replaced, and we've purchased additional motherboards, whatever you want to call them, that in the event that happens again, that we have those parts on island. The second case that I know of is when there was an outage at the RO processing plant, and that started around the period of Barrow, and then of course we had Ernesto. So just a series of bad events that led to no RO water being produced. So that's the main reason why there was some delays with the processing of Saba Splash.
I'm just curious, ask what's being done, because you mentioned this barrel and then Nesto and so on. I'm just curious what's being done to, because I can imagine that if there's another storm, then similar incident could happen, and what's being done to address that?
Well, a new intake at the location at Fort Bay, where the RO plant is located, that was finalized, I believe, last week. The previous intake was more or less just something that was put together. It didn't really have any type of protection from the rough seas. Of course, if there was any disturbances, the water where it was being taken from was always very muddy. With the new intake, however, There is a more of a professional type of pit that's made with concrete cylinders. Pipes now extend outwards from that into the sea. I believe it's something like 15 meters out to a much deeper level. So, of course, there's going to be periods of time if there's a hurricane that, you have to take some measures to protect what's there. But what we should see now with this new intake is that during like regular ground seas, the pipes are far enough and deep enough that it shouldn't disrupt the supply of water for the RO.
Thank you.
Are there any follow-up questions by any of the other council members at this time pertaining to this agenda point? Okay, Mr. Charles, then you can move on to your next point of the agenda.
The final point is food security, and under that point is mentioned that there's a proposal to reinforce food security efforts, particularly in the areas of the hydroponics farm, the reforestation program, as well as animal husbandry and backyard farming. Can Executive Council align what steps are being taken in these areas above to improve food security based on this proposal, and also would it be possible to receive the proposal?
Thank you.
Yeah. Of course, the proposal can be shared. That's something that we can share with the registrar. As for I'll do per point. With hydroponics, we're in the process of expanding the facilities. Initially, we started with one greenhouse, and I would say within another month or so, we should have 3 greenhouses. Also, the material that was used for the first greenhouse was, I would say a bit inferior. It was something that was bought by the previous person that was over that project. So we're changing that to make the greenhouses actually more robust. Not only are we building more greenhouses, but we've also purchased additional growing equipment while also building growing systems ourselves. So once everything is fully functional, we'll have 3 greenhouses with far more growing systems that we should produce more of local food here on island. With regards to reforestation, that's a project that's ongoing. I believe it was about a month ago, several fruit trees were given away again. That was the second time. And I believe those initiatives will continue in the coming months, whereas we try to promote more backyard farming, production of fruit trees, so be it. And with regards to animal husbandry, there was a program that was ongoing, whereas government would purchase a container of things with feed and hay, but what we noticed was that there was a lot of loss. Maybe the container had a leak and the stuff would get wet, or maybe there was less demand for a certain type of feed at that moment in time, and it would spoil. So what the idea is now is that we will allow the persons that wish to buy feed or hay or whatever have you equipment, that the cost for shipping in ABB will be reimbursed as a sort of incentive that more get involved in animal husbandry.
Thank you, Commissioner. Are there any follow-up questions at this time, starting with Councilmember Charles? No? Are there any?
I'm just curious about how's the reception within the community in regards to the whole project with the greenhouses? How's the output there?
Yeah, well, right now they're not producing any lettuce because of the work that's going on at the facility. Yeah. But they weren't able to keep up with the demand when they were producing lettuce. So, they produced lettuce, tomatoes, and cucumbers as a start, and then they had sometimes they would have bok choy and things like that. But once they have more growing systems in operation, of course, they can expand the different types of grains, but then also the quantities. But when it was in full operations, they weren't able to keep up with the demand.
Thank you.
Councilmember Nancy, did you have any follow-up questions? Okay, then that would conclude the agenda point of question rounds from flag correspondents. In concluding that, we now move on to agenda point 6, which is presentation of the Fort Bay Road below the S-curve. So I now call on the head of the Department of Infrastructure and Spatial Planning, Zelda Musin, to give her presentation on the Fort Bay, the S-curve. And with this, I'm just going to adjourn the meeting for 5 minutes while you prepare, and then we'll convene, okay? Good afternoon again. So before we start, I would just like to remind or notify the public that this is a central committee meeting, and in accordance with our rules of order, Article 23 states that those who wish to make audio or video recordings of a public meeting must notify the committee chairman and act in accordance with this. So no recording can happen by the public during this meeting. I just wanted to make that clear. And with that, Zelda, you can now continue.
Thank you very much. So for the past couple of months, a few questions were asked about the erosive area below the S-curve at Port Bay Road. And we were also asked to provide you with some information on the progress that has been made in the past few months. So this is basically a technical briefing where I will explain something about the short-term and long-term measures we're taking. If you have any questions, feel free to interrupt at any time. So to start with the short-term solution, we already announced we would start repairs on the fencing. Unfortunately, this was delayed. This had to do with shipping times of materials that were needed for the repairs. But last week, Thursday, I believe, Saba Roads started the repair work of the fencing. This week, they will remove any damaged parts. Next week, they expect to start repairs on the beams. And in total, they expect that the repair works will take about 1 to 1.5 months. So that's what we can expect for the next few weeks. We do expect that when they use the crane, the road will be blocked for short periods of time, and this will of course be announced in advance. Then about the long-term solution, we also shared this before with the Island Council, that a risk assessment would be done, and this risk assessment really focused on that area you see in this picture. That is very erosive, it's just below the S-curve. We received a draft report 2 weeks ago, and this report is a research on the existing conditions, but it also has potential design solutions, and I will explain a bit about the report and what's in there. First of all, about the existing conditions, they had some specialists come over to the island. They looked at the road, the curved road and drainage. They looked at the rockfall patterns we see right now. They looked at the geological conditions, the terrain analysis, weather and climate conditions, and also the existing vegetation and ground cover. They did a survey using drones with LiDAR technology. So they were able to really capture what's going on in this area. This is what we see from the road, the fence collapsed, but actually when you look up, you see that the erosion actually starts way up higher on the hill, actually way up high, all the way to the top. And this makes it a very complicated problem. It's not a local erosive area that we can tackle somehow, the issue. It starts really all the way to the top. About the geology, well, it's very technical, but they looked at the composition of the soil. But it's a type of material that is not very consolidated. We see zones of weakness. The overall stability of the slope is reduced. And on top of that, we have very steep slopes in this area, 45 degrees. And this leads to increased gravitational forces. And that accelerates the whole erosion process. So we have a lot of bad luck in this area. Then when we go to the design, they also looked at techniques and they said, well, this is not possible in this area. So what is not possible according to this consultant, is scaling works to remove unstable rocks. Well, as you just saw, it starts all the way to the top. It's just too unsafe to go up there to try and remove loose rocks. Also, using rock bolts and bent mesh, something you see in this picture, they think is not a solution because of the size of the area, because it's not safe to work there, and also because the composition of the soil, it won't hold the bolts properly. Also, works that require tall track cranes is impossible because this area is just not accessible for big machines. Also, solutions that only depend on vegetation we don't think are very realistic because there's no topsoil. Then we go to things that are possible. So they looked at passive structures. Passive structures do not prevent rockfall, but they mitigate the damage that can be caused by the rocks. So we saw the rocks are already unstable all the way to the top. We cannot prevent them going down, but we can take passive measures to prevent damage to the road. They looked at 4 options. Each option is described in quite a lot of detail. They did a SWOT analysis, and they also suggested budgets for these different solutions. First solution, catch fence. This is what we already have in place. It is very cost effective. it has limited capacity, so at some point it might collapse. Estimated costs around $1 million, 2 million. And you also see a section of this solution. Second solution, a Canadian wall. It's more robust, but still has a limited impact on pretty large rockfall. Also, the whole thing could become unstable if a lot of rocks fall. Estimated costs are roughly the same, 1 to 2 million. Then the next solution is a retaining wall. It's stronger, more durable, but the initial costs are pretty high, actually comparable to the fence and the Canadians, I would say. But also to build this retaining wall, it will have an impact on traffic, on the environment. It's a larger project. And then the last option is a gallery wall shed. It's very strong. It gives us long-term protection, but it has very high initial costs and a lot of construction challenges. It's something you see a lot in Europe, in the Alps. There are some examples. I think St. Kitts was mentioned. Yeah. But yeah, this would be very safe, but it also has a very large impact, and the estimated budget would be 3 to 5 million. So next steps. Now that we have this initial report, we of course have to review, and then we have to select maybe a combination of suggested measures, look at where we want these to be located. The report really focuses on the stretch below the S-curve, but maybe we see some other weak points where something is needed. Next step would then be to make a detailed design and cost estimate, and then we go to the question of budget. And about budget, currently our island has very limited budget for island infrastructure. Most projects are realized with incidental funds, and we don't have a lot of structural funds for infrastructure maintenance or investments. This is also something that was highlighted in the IDE Versa report. It was said that actually in the IDE Versa report there was not much attention paid to infrastructural costs. And therefore, just last week, follow-up research started looking at infrastructural costs for the islands. This research will be done by EIF, and the final report is expected in the first quarter of 2025. We expect that the conclusion will be that islands need much more funding to do infrastructural investments such as this. That will result in additional funding. But for now, we don't have 5 million ready to make a gallery function. Any questions?
Okay, so for the question segment, I'll do, for structural purposes, I'll go in the same order that we usually do. Then we address your questions to Zelda. And again, just to be reminded that the questions asked to Zelda should remain technical questions. Okay? So we'll first go with Island Councilmember Charles.
I guess it's kind of obvious, but I just wanted to ask on that. If cost was an option, what would be the preferred option?
If cost wasn't an option?
Or was that a concern?
Well, I think the safest option is the gallery, but it has a large impact also during construction on the environment. You're changing basically the whole road. So we would also look into more detail what other impacts that has. And you could also discuss whether it would be a good spending of your money, or maybe it's better to spend this money through on a lower stretch of roads, doing a different type of measure to increase the safety along the whole Port Bay road. If budget wasn't consideration at all, yeah, you can make a tunnel from the start of Port Bay Road to the end.
If I can just add something to that, I think if budget wasn't an issue, the priority probably should be the bypass road that will connect Fort Bay to Jusquarto, because like Zelda mentioned, that area is by far the most dangerous area. But that doesn't mean that the rest of the road isn't dangerous as well, because almost the entirety of the road is either between two very steep slopes or one very steep slope. So, I mean, to make that 100% safe, you're talking about a huge investment, and that's probably money that is spent on just creating the bypass road.
And you guys have the discussion for another time, but I guess since you brought it up, what are the developments in regards to that, the bypass road? Because I know that there was and has been discussions for creating that, particularly when the new harbor is placed. But is there maybe plan to speed up the plan to design and implement it?
Well, the first phase of the road is designed, and correct me if I'm wrong, Zola, should go on tender before the end of this year.
I think so. Yeah. So the first. Yeah.
And that would take it to the area where the solar park is. The rest of the road would have to be further detailed and developed, the planning. And then once the budget is, have an idea of what's necessary to build that second part of the road, then of course the lobbying starts to get that done. But at least the first part of the road is ready to go.
And that, just to clarify, that first part is from where?
The area where the new harbor will come up to where the solar park is, will also come. So I would say maybe 40% of the hill, 30-40% of the hill.
Yeah.
So already a significant amount of the road.
And is there an estimate already of what that would cost to complete the entire road?
To complete the entire road?
But there is an estimate that shows that this first stretch of road until the solar park is within the budget. Yeah, the first up to the solar.
Are there any more questions, Mrs. Rose? Madam Councilmember Matthew, do you have any questions at this time?
So there's just something from your expertise, maybe when you were talking about the geological aspects of the rocks down there. Do you see that, or do you think that we have that in other places on the island that it would be very difficult, or where the erosion is very, very high up, so maybe from set where we have a lot of activity going on? There's a lot of things just coming from above, so maybe we have that basically everywhere. What do you think?
Well, we really have a combination of things right here. So there's lack of vegetation, steep slopes, and a very unstable spot. So, and we cut the road there. So I think maybe you can find it in other locations, for example, on the steep cliffs around, on the coastline. But there it's not much of a problem because there's no road. So I think this is really by far the worst part when it comes to road safety on islands. Yeah.
Any more? Madam Councilmember.
Yes. Well, first of all, thank you for the presentation, and I would like to also apologize because we did have a meeting planned where you would give this presentation to the council. But nevertheless, it's good that we're doing it in a public setting because the public also has a right to know about this. My question is not necessarily about if you can go back to the slide where you have the red line on it. I don't know which one it was. It's just a question just for the short term. It is a technical question. Yeah, that one right there. So they're basically removing the fencing and then they're going to excavate at the back of basically they're going to replace how it was before.
Yeah.
My question is, can they go back a few meters, just creating some space behind the fencing? And this would also make it a lot easier when clearing rocks, so that a small excavator, for instance, can go back there on a regular basis until we have a long-term planning. I don't know if that's possible, of course, because I'm not really a structural engineer or into that field. But for me, I think it would serve as a buffer zone. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. If you look at the way how the fencing is, you go back a few meters. And that area will serve as a buffer zone if rocks do come down, and they will come down, for the short term. And I don't think it's going to be a hefty investment. We already have the machinery there. They can just excavate it a few meters more.
So you mean just to clean out the area behind that?
Correct, just step it back a little bit further, and that would serve like as a buffer zone if rocks do come down when you replace the fencing. That's just my
Well, it's
about
something we
that
certainly can look at. I think what could be a challenge is that the hillside is actually very steep, so maybe when you start excavating, it becomes unstable, but we can see how much space we have. Also, if we decide to come with a solution with retaining walls or another fence, it's customary to indeed have them not right next to the hill, but leave some space and maybe backfill a little bit so you have space for the rocks to fall down behind the fence and not go over. But I will ask and have a look on site to see if we can also widen this area for the maybe.
I would even go as far as say they could actually excavate it in a step, widen and put like a step there, and this would greatly, in my opinion, greatly alleviate some of the issues with any type of rocks coming down temporarily, and not cost too much in my estimation.
We will verify. I remember it was a bit of we looked at it when we were thinking of the gabions and we thought we didn't have much space, but we can double check it maybe for this solution.
Thank you. Considering it. That's all I have.
Thank you, Island Council Member Every, and so I also just have one question. And first, also, I would like to thank you for taking the time to come here to present this to us. It was a good explanation, and I know this work, we live on a volcanic island, and it's not always a common sense solution for issues like this, and it requires very strategic planning and engineering, and I know those things can cost a lot. I also agree with Commissioner Zegas that I think an investment of this should be focused more towards the bypass road, as it will be a more safer solution also. But my question is this the only part of the road that will have the fence? I know in the past also a bit higher, before coming on the S, they also had a fence on that area. Is that something that's also going to be there, or will the fencing only be in this area?
For now, with the repair of the fencing, we only focus on this area. I know there are measures we're taking in the past in other areas, retaining walls. I'm not sure which fence you refer to, but for now, the assignment for this contractor is only to focus on the repairs of this fence.
The fence I was referring to is right before you go down to the S.
Okay.
On the opposite side, it used to be.
The concrete wall.
Yeah.
And there was a fence?
No, it's a concrete wall. I
Okay.
think because it's also filled up a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's more the same thing with the evacuation of the area. So. Okay. Is there a need for a second round, or is everything fine? Okay. Well, thank you again, Saba. And
Thank you.
Thank you. So we now move on to agenda point 7, which is the Island Council Proposal 2024.6 Draft Multi-Annual Budget 2025 to 2028. So this is on the agenda as a discussion item for now, and this discussion will continue also next month before putting to a vote at the Island Council meeting, hopefully in October. So this means that the Island Council now has the opportunity to ask technical questions related to the draft multi-annual budget 2025 to 2028. So I now look to my right first, and we'll start with Island Council Member Charles. You now have the floor.
Thank you. One moment. Thank you, Chair. My first question is in regards to the, well, first of all, let me just also want to thank the Finance Department for your job, once again, preparing budget in a timely manner. It's delivered as outlined by the legislation on the second, or that was Monday, so I think that's fine. We're not going to make anything about that. And it was, I think overall there's more information shared, and I think there's efforts to make it more in depth, so and to make it more transparent, also to be concise. I also have to commend the Executive Council for the summary of the document, which already provided quite a bit of information, especially broader suggestion or broader goals and objectives in regards to the budget. So I thought that was also something that was noteworthy and should be spoken about in a positive way. My first question is going to be restricted free allowance, and over the years we've had discussion about these what it's called, these budgets when they give money, and then grants, these incidental grants, and now we see that they're moving away from the incidental grants, and then they end up being these restricted free allowances, which I see it calling the same thing by a different name. So my question is, because now it seems that if you're getting a bigger amount of money to spend, but part of the job with free allowances of Executive Council, Island Council, that you can establish a budget together, or you want to run the island in a better way, or you want to manage the affairs of the island. But if that's already restricted because of the national government, then it makes it difficult for us to make those decisions and to do our job. So my first question is in regards to that restricted free allowance, and it says, and it's mentioned that there's an increasing trend in funds designated as restricted free allowance. What is the total amount of this so-called restricted free allowance? What is the percentage of the restricted free allowance in relation to the total budget? And more importantly, are there discussions with the national government to convert this restricted free allowance into unrestricted free allowance? The second question is in regards to the governing program. In the budget, it is mentioned that the budget integrates key objectives from the governing program. Would it be possible to outline what are these objectives and how are they integrated into the governing program? How are they integrated into the budget? And then also, what is the status of the execution plan that was requested in the motion of June 12, 2024, where the governing program was presented? My third subject is in regard to the vehicle purchases, and it's mentioned that there are 3 areas where there will be significant investment, and the purchase of vehicles is one of these areas. Has the government developed a fleet maintenance plan for vehicles in order to manage the cost of maintenance? And if not, are there plans to develop a fleet maintenance plan? And the reason I ask this question is because clearly we're spending more and more money on vehicles on a regular basis. And I think it's important to have costs associated with the maintenance of these vehicles in sight, and to be accounted for as well as part of regular planning. And it wasn't clear to me within the budget that is being done adequately. So that's my question, the rationale for my question. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Alec. Councilmember Charles. Commissioner Sagers, you can now respond.
Thank you, Chair Lady. With regards to the restricted free allowance, there is some information that I can share now. In the budget of 2020 to 2025, Yep. There's an amount of 2.1 million, and that's so-called restricted free allowance, and 1.6 of that is for the net, so the sustainability type projects. 300,000, which has been earmarked for maintenance, and then 166,000 for the public transportation initiative. In addition to this, there's 1 million that we received from the Ministry of Infrastructure, which goes towards maintenance of infrastructure and those type of things. For example, net, on one hand, that's incidental money, so that's not something that probably is going to be a long-term type of funding. When it's done, I believe it will be done. But for example, things like maintenance and public transportation, those should be added to the free allowance in the coming years. But then, of course, just like that, then there's other fundings that for special projects that come to the island. Those are also incidental in nature. So while we still try to get those made more structural, those are discussions that continue to go on with the ministries to build an argumentation as to why they should be structural and not incidental. But I believe we have come quite a way with areas such as public health. I know, for example, money that was considered at the time as incidental is not structural. So slowly we're getting there that some of that incidental is being made available structurally. With regards to the questions about what's in the budget for the governing program, I just want to highlight a few things, but also mention that the governing program was only voted on June 12th. The execution plan isn't already completed. So that answers one of the questions that's still being worked on. But also the governing program aligns quite a bit with what's into the Saba package. There's other initiatives in the governing program that maybe bring things more to focus than what's in the Saba package, but just a few things that's already implemented, such as like the social minimum, the salaries have been adjusted, there has been increases in the subsidies for culture, for community grants. The salary of the Education Culture Policy Advisor has been made structural. A new team has been formed at the Infrastructure and Spatial Planning Department. Projects for a new solar park and Jalsquarta Road leading to the new solar park will commence soon. Net funds are being used to support sustainability initiatives. So, although the execution plan isn't there, there's already ongoing projects that support what's in the governing program, and that's just a few of those examples. With regards to vehicle purchases and having a fleet maintenance plan, I understood from the Department of Public Works that that's still something that's being developed. What you see is that although there's not necessarily a plan, vehicles tend to go much longer than their depreciated value, which I believe for vehicles is normally at 5 years. For example, we just purchased new school buses through the Best for Kids program, and those buses were much older than 5 years. And that's the case with many of the other vehicles within the government fleet. So even though there isn't necessarily a detailed maintenance plan, I do believe that maintenance is at quite a high level, saying that we are able to keep vehicles being used even beyond the depreciation value. But a plan is indeed being worked on.
Councilman Charles, is that, do you have follow-up questions?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, for the opportunity to ask some questions, follow up on the remarks of Commissioner Sabas. My question is in regards to the maintenance, because when I say maintenance, the restricted free allowance associated with maintenance, because I know that has been that's been restricted for some time. I think that was one of the first bits of restricted free allowance that we received, and you said that you believe eventually it will be integrated into the budget. Do you have any insight into possibly when that would be integrated into the budget?
No.
In regards to the governing program and its integration into the budget. And I think what maybe we expected and understand is June 12th was when the motion was presented and adopted. I think part of what we would expect is that there are headlines because the government program mentions headlines, and then you see that reflected. I think 4 major headlines, then you see that reflected in the budget. So then you see that particular section, then all the areas associated with that, and so on and so on. And so that would make it easier, and that was the idea behind the governing program, to make it easier for us to follow up on the actions taken by the Executive Council when they're carrying out the governing program. So I'm just curious if in the next budget, but also in follow-up reporting, so for instance, in the first budget amendment next year, whether or not we will see reporting in line with the headlines of the governing program.
Yeah, well, for the actual reporting part of it and how it's illustrated into the budget amendments, specifically starting in the first quarter of next year, I think that's something that I can discuss with the finance team to see how we can integrate that into the reporting. I do believe that for subsequent budgets, it should be possible to highlight more of the direct results of the governing program in the actual draft budgets moving forward. But again, it's important to have that finalized execution plan and how that aligns with, for example, the civil package. So I do think that how those are things that can be developed to ensure that how there is transparency between what's in the governing program and what is represented into the budget and budget amendment documents.
And if I could follow up, thank you for that explanation. If I can follow up a little bit on that, why do you think it's also important? Because, for instance, what we have not begun here, and I hope that we can in the future do that, is this idea of what we call spring memorandum in the Netherlands, or 40 hours nota, where you report on how expenditures look for the first quarter of the year and what decisions we make along for the rest of the year, but also some insight in some guidance to how we can influence the budget of the next year. So for instance, if we have a spring memorandum discussion in 2025, that would then create priorities along the lines of the governing program for 2026. So I hope that the Executive Council is also making preparation and we should maybe have an agreement that there will be an opportunity for a spring memorandum discussion or debate next year.
Yeah, well, that's only possible when the new FinVest is in place, because the cycle doesn't change until that happens. And the planning right now, with the changes of the reporting schedule in the new FinVest, isn't until I believe January of 2026. So it's not to say that although there's certain agreements that's being made, that we can find ourselves within the new WALBEST and new FinVest. As far as we understand, those don't get implemented until January of 26. But of course, we can find a medium ground to see how we can make it work. But I think it cannot be underestimated the vast amount of work that goes into producing the quarterly reports and the budget amendment and the budget. So there has to be some understanding there as well.
But if you look at what the implementation report is right now, it's essentially a spring memorandum, and it's presented after the first quarter of the year anyway. So it could already be. So you have a debate about it, and that creates the opportunity to say, well, we would like to see this or that priority reflected in the budget of the previous year. And I think that's something we can agree can be done.
Oh, sure.
That there could be a discussion that when that document arrives, that we then use that as an opportunity to establish priorities for 2026.
I believe there's always space for those types of discussions. I mean, the role of the Island Council is to establish the parameters of the budget. So if the Island Council sees areas that a certain initiative needs to be changed or more attention is needed or something, To me, that space should always be there, so those discussions should always be possible.
I agree, but then there needs to be a moment for it as well.
True.
Because otherwise we're always doing it, and or we say that yes, well, we can always make a moment for it, but then we don't make the moment for it. You know, I think that's something that has been missing over the years. I think as we move forward, it's important, just like we did with the governing program, that would be another moment in 2025 to influence the budget of 2076.
Yeah.
Charles? We now move on to Island Council Member Saskia Matthew.
I don't have much to say today, but I really want to thank the finance department. I really love the proposal, and I still enjoying going through the budget since I have a whole month to go through it still. So I just wanted to say thanks so much, and I'm looking forward to like working together and seeing how much better we can do moving forward. So thanks.
Thank you, Island Council Member Matthew. Island Council Member Every, you know how to work.
Yeah. Yes, of course. Thank you. Is it finance department, planning, or and control? No, it's really. I also just perused the document, but I did have a few questions in light of that. But before I ask the question, because like Saskia said, we do have a lot to go through. I'm just going to pick up a couple of questions that I sent already in writing to the commissioners. But first, I want to congratulate, of course, Saba for obtaining an additional 30 million euros for the harbor project, and also for the in regards to connectivity, and another 10 million for 2026. And of course, this is a great achievement, and I commend the commissioners and your team for always, doing really good work for together, of course, with the national government. My only regret is that in the same spirit of improving connectivity, that no funds were earmarked for enhancing connectivity at the airport in regards to airlift. So, but nevertheless, we will continue the fight for the people. With that, I just have, I do have a few questions, of course, about the financial system, sustainability, investments, priorities, response to inflation and cost of living. So I'm going to start with that one. So how does the budget address the challenges posed by the rising inflation and the high cost of living on the island? And are there specific provisions or subsidies included to assist vulnerable groups with rising costs, such as for food, housing, and utilities? Should I read off all the questions that I have?
Quite a few questions. So.
Yeah, there are
So,
a few. So
Island Council Member Every, maybe you do it per point, you ask for questions per that point, and then you give the commissioner the opportunity to answer, and then we continue like that, because I know you had quite a few concerns. Is there any more at that point?
No, that was it for that one.
Okay, Commissioner, then we can.
Okay, well, I believe the first part of the question I'll answer, and then my colleague will answer the second question. Based on your introduction, I would want to mention about the release today. It's actually 40 million over the period of 2 years that will close the gap into the budget for the harbor project, and that's quite a significant achievement, especially when you look at seeing how other funds are being distributed amongst the other islands. Facility at 40 million for such a project, that definitely shows the type of relationship that we've built over the years within the ministries, the trust that you have in Saba. So this is a game-changing type of development. And as you mentioned, it's a pity that there's not more focus on air connectivity. But the harbor, is indeed a lifeline. Without a harbor, there's no way to get food to the island. We're right now doesn't even want to transport, small packages, as you see at this cargo. With this new harbor, there will be facilities for cargo in the event it's needed. Of course, it provides safe anchorage for local boat owners, improved facilities for ferries and all other visiting boats. So, today is a big day for Saba, I believe, a big day for the development of the island. I believe it brings, it will bring many opportunities for our people, for economic development, for various types of jobs, especially in the hospitality industry, because I can imagine that property around there will be developed eventually. But yeah, quite an accomplishment, and I do believe that the planning is right now that the project will be awarded and a contract signed within a month. So that would keep us in line with the timeline to have the project finished towards the latter part of 2026. With regards to the first question about the free allowance, indeed there's challenges with inflation and the high cost of living. There's not much that the island budget can influence the population. I mean, there's certain realities, but you also see measures taken by the national government. For example, with the social minimum, there's also measures, for people to get assistance with electricity and so forth. So I will mainly focus on to, what happens within government. Because just like the cost of doing business increases for the business community, it also increases for government. But there is a mechanism in place that the free allowance is adjusted based on the inflation percentage each year. Before that wasn't the case, but that now has changed structurally. So each year there is an indexation of the free allowance, which reflects the reality of what's happening per island. So it's not one size fits all, it's based on the percentage per island. Second question is.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And the second question was, are there specific provisions or subsidies included to assist vulnerable groups, such as rising costs, food, housing, utilities? Within the Department of Community Development and Culture, there are various subsidies and forms of assistance that is available for vulnerable community members. These include energy subsidies, school uniform assistance, water loads, school meal programs for both schools, primary and secondary school, and other support provided on a case-by-case basis. And while assistance is offered to individuals in need of housing, for example, the availability of support is dependent on the housing market and also limited opportunity within social homes. As you know, we don't have that many social homes, and a lot of individuals have to pay rent on the outside market because of the high asking rent monthly payment. But yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think Councilor Agreement.
Yeah. So thank you for the answers to the question, and indeed, Commissioner Zegers, that is definitely an achievement for Saba. Infrastructure and development. This is on page 12. Which infrastructure projects are prioritized in this budget, and how do they align with Saba's long-term development strategy? I know we just had a presentation about something that I think should be a priority, and I think we all would agree on that. Maybe I can just mention that as maybe thinking about that as a priority for the long term, of course. And will the funding for these projects primarily come from local resources, or are there external partnerships and funding sources being pursued?
Thank you. Commissioner Nava.
Okay. There's always, the regular type of projects, that's, whether it's maintenance related or, just a little bit that goes beyond maintenance, like things like public buildings, roads and road safety, recreational facilities, the RO water network, which receives quite a bit of attention, and then the regular work that you see happen at the airport and the harbor. Many of these activities are financed through the structural budget, whereas when you have the bigger type of projects that are more based on a long-term development strategy, those are normally funded through external sources. So for example, like the harbor project, you have the school projects and enrichment center, investments in the airport infrastructure, hydroponics, affordable housing, some of the widening of the roads is also financed through that type of funding, and investments in local spaces, public spaces. So you have two types. You have the smaller type that's more aligns with what's available within the local budget and the local reserves, and then you have the bigger type projects where we seek funding from the ministries.
Or something that is close to that. Thank you for the answers. There will be more questions, of course, as we proceed, and not really not today, but of course in the coming period. But something that is close to my heart, of course, the contingency planning and risk management. So how does the budget account for the potential risks such as natural disasters, economic downturns, or other unexpected financial pressures? And what specific contingency measures are in place to ensure that the island can effectively respond to emergencies during the 2025-2028 period? This is something that is in the governor.
Thank you for that question. The public entity is only responsible for the first question is how does the budget account for potential risks? So the public entity is only responsible for the immediate response to a major natural disaster. And this is also referred to on pages 54 and 55 of the Buffer and Resilience Capital, which has more explanation. Over the past years, the public entity has been able to build a reserve of $2.2 million for the resilience capacity, which the Island Council will be able to use this reserve in combination with available liquidity as soon as it is needed to cover any substantial unexpected expenditures without the required involvement of basic cap. So that is what we have. So let's say, for example, a hurricane happens, this reserve of 2.2 million, we can already begin and then wait upon additional funds from the Netherlands. The second part of your question was specific contingency measures are in place to ensure the island can effectively respond to emergencies. So again, on the Buffer Resilience Capital, so the crisis plan Saba 2023 to 2027 describes a multidisciplinary disaster management organization, more specifically the generic method of cooperation between public and private safety partners before, during, and after an incident or disaster in the so-called response phase. The described method will be used for all incidents unless separate agreements or plans are made for specific incidents. The Executive Council, together with its safety partners, has the ambition to provide with a limited available human and material resource an adequately equipped and competent disaster management organization which will collaborate and communicate when necessary in dealing with incidents and crises. In addition, the people of Saba are aware of and prepared for risk and take their responsibilities in case of a disaster. For this purpose, investments are, for example, made to improve the water supply infrastructure, which was alluded to earlier today, but also for extinguishing fires. The companies that will be made to the system. Continuous attention is given to education, training, and exercise for persons with a role in Saba's crisis organization. Efforts are made to continue updating the existing hurricane plans, which have been updated earlier this year for all emergency support functions, and regular contact with partners in the European Netherlands and partners within the region are aimed at sharing knowledge and training together. The most recent example of this is the Windward Express in September of this year, where the military partners will participate.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. And one of the questions before my last question is in regards to the legal support to the Island Council. I read on page 20, the legal support is provided to the Executive Council and the Governor. And my question is, could this support also be extended to the Island Council to ensure structural legal guidance? And considering the complexity of the legislative and governance matters, with permanent legal support enhance decision making and ensure continuity. And is the Executive Council considering providing permanent legal support for the Health Council? If not, what are the barriers to including this in the multi-annual budget, and how can they be addressed for the long-term sustainability?
Good, thank you for that.
Again, Governor.
So civil servant support from the legal department has structurally been available to the Island Council. The official scope of civil servant support is stipulated in the Island Council ordinance, which is called Verordening Ambtelijke Bijstand Openbaarlijk aan Saba. And therefore the Island Council itself is in charge of setting the parameters of civil servant support. The Registrar's Office is primarily burdened with guidance of the Island Council and its own procedures and roles within government. The Island Council, as the employer of the Registrar's Office, is in charge of their employees and the requirements of the staff. So the complexity, the second question you asked, considering the complexity of the legislative and governance methods will permanent legal support enhance decision making. So when ordinances are proposed, legal advice has always been available and will always be available. Guidance in governance matters are primarily the task of the Registrar Office. And then the third question is the Executive Council consider providing permanent legal support for the Island Council. An additional legal advisor will add to the capacity of the legal department for October of this year. Another position for a legal advisor is still vacant. Legal support has always been available to the Island Council and is still available, as I stated, by means of the ordinance. And permanent employment in exclusive service to the Island Council is an internal method of the Island Council.
Thank you for the elucidation, Governor. And my last question is in regards to revenue generation, which is on page 24. And of course, this might be a little bit difficult for some, but it is a question nonetheless for me. What new revenue generating strategies are being introduced in the 2025-2028 budget, and are there plans to introduce or increase specific taxes such as departure tax, tourism tax, alcohol and cigarette taxes, or a nature tax?
Thank you. Councilmember Everett.
Yeah, I would like to highlight the study that will be done on the tourism tax. And that would encompass the departure tax, the nature tax, other nature tourism related taxes, one would associate with that. That seems to be the only one right now that would have, I would say, some potential impact during the course of 2025, but we have to exactly see what outcome the study shows and how we can implement that, because that's not something that we can change from one month to the next. Simply because, for example, you have diet groups, for example, they have, bookings well months in advance. So, that's something that, there would have to be some real planning to see how to implement that. Not just implement it, but also how do you execute it. And, we can learn a lot from Brunel with how they did it. With regards to any other taxes that would be implemented or increased, there has been discussions in the past about the garbage collection fee. That also relates to the MEPA project with the removal of cars. But those things are still very, very early in the discussion phase. We have to also balance everything. I mean, the cost of living is very high on the island. There's only so much that you can expect to get from 2,000 people. I think that's known not only within this hall, but also in The Hague. There's only so much that you can get out from a very, very small population. There's no real possibilities for big revenue generating taxes or anything like that. So that's always something that we have to be mindful for. So the only thing that I would, mention is the one with the tourism tax, but that's also one that we have to see how it develops.
For the cigarette and alcohol tax, is this something?
There's also been discussions about that, but not and to say that how it's getting close to the package proposal or anything like that.
Mr. George, about.
I just wanted to raise something that the council member mentioned, and that's in regards to the airport tax and possibility, the project tax and possibility of increasing it. And I think I would be in favor of probably eliminating it, because one of the things highlighted over the years, and I remember the first time I heard it was when there was a tourism conference here, is that one of the biggest obstacles to travel within the region is these high costs of airport fees. In fact, recently when we were traveling from Monia, I took the magazine onto the back seat, and the introduction from the CEO of Monia, he spoke about how high taxes was one of the reasons for their high ticket prices. It constitutes almost half of the ticket prices. So I think that if we would like to, that's not the area we want to have a discussion about in terms of increasing and looking at revenue generation, in my opinion. I think also, for instance, if you look at what happened with the Federal discussions, where Stacia said one of the reasons why Salmon was reluctant was because they want to stimulate their own revenue generation, whereas you just try to stimulate into island connectivity. So I think as a cost member, because that's within our jurisdiction to determine the amount and higher taxes, we should also be careful of how we live in accessibility.
Thank you, and Councilor Charles.
Not a rebuttal, but I just wanted to make clear, I'm not trying to raise taxes. It was more about the question of revenue generation and what other possible areas we were exploring. Those are the points that I got from it.
But I just wanted to state
Thank you.
our position.
Council members, and then Councilor Matthew, do you have any follow-up questions at this time? And does that conclude your question section? Okay. At this time, I would also like to ask a few questions. So first, like my colleagues, I would also like to thank the finance team per usual for the hard work in preparation of the draft annual budget. I would also like to congratulate the government of Saba for their dedication towards the Black Rocks Harbor project, and also congratulate the people of Saba, as today I think is a day that we can all be very proud of, the allocation of an additional 40 million euros to ensure the start and completion of this project. And I definitely think this will be a great asset to the entire community, so I would like to congratulate you all on that as well. So at this time, pertaining to the budget, I have a few questions, and my first one is in line with overview of reserves and provision. And just for reference, this was on page 70. And my question is, the budget includes detailed reserves and provisions, and can you explain the criteria used to determine the levels of these reserves? And how does the council plan to utilize these funds in the event of an expected financial shortfall or emergency? Looking into the budget itself, I don't think this was referring to the buffer capital, as that was on page 54. So maybe you could explain this point a bit more. My second question was in relation to digitalization and process improvements in finance. And this was in reference to page 13 in the budget. My question is, with the full automation of the financial administration system by 2025, what contingencies are in place to handle potential system failures or data breaches, especially considering the increased reliance on digital processes? And I'm asking this to ensure that the organization is prepared for any additional or any potential disruptions or security breaches. My next question is in regards to increased enforcement capacity. And as we've seen over the last period, there's been many new laws and ordinances being introduced. And of course, enforcement becomes more complex and demanding. So my question is, with the anticipated pressure on enforcement capacity due to these new rules and ordinances, what specific training programs are planned to ensure that current and new enforcers are adequately equipped to handle their expanded roles?
You should answer that.
Well, since I only had a few.
That's only one question.
Yeah. Is it okay if I continue?
Yeah.
Okay.
More.
There's only two. And then my next one is pertaining to public transportation enhancement. And enhancing public transportation is a significant investment. I know we have these conversations all the time, but for me it's crucial to understand how the allocated funds will be used. So the budget includes funds for enhancing public transportation, and I would like if you could elaborate on how these funds will be allocated between the purchases of buses, enhancement of bus stops and other related infrastructure that is related to this point in the budget. And then the final question is overview of personnel expenses. So in the budget it's clear that personnel expenses represent a significant portion of the budget. So my question is, what measures are being implemented to ensure that the growth in personnel costs remain aligned with the overall financial stability of the government? And that concludes the question. Commissioner, you now have the floor.
Yeah. With regards to the first question about the reserves, these are normally, there's no real criteria to establish what reserves are, what level they should be at. For example, if there's a surplus, there's always an advice from the executive council saying, so much should go towards maybe, maintenance, or so much should go towards infrastructure, so much should go towards like the general reserve or the buffer capital. But this is always done so with an understanding that, through the free allowance, there isn't sufficient money available for the full maintenance of all government properties or the full maintenance of infrastructure, the entire road network, for example. So, building these surpluses building these reserves over the years does allow that some more urgent type projects can continue to ensure that, the road remains safe, that the public buildings, are, in a deplorable state. There's right now there's no exact criteria to establish, how much that needs to be. What's happening right now, and that's something that Zelda mentioned in our presentation, is that there's a research that's ongoing, initiated by Basic Carrigan, that's not being done by Ida Verza. Ida Verza look more at the services and not necessarily what's needed for maintenance or what's needed for infrastructure or what's needed for investments. So I believe once that research is complete, we will have a better idea of what exactly is needed for those types of provisions that are, I would say, very lowly estimated or being financed right now, because there's not many opportunities that we can allocate funds towards maintenance or towards infrastructure or towards digitalization or other initiatives that we deem necessary. So I hope that answers your question for the first one. As for the digitalization and the process improvement in finance, I'll be honest, that's not my area of expertise. I do believe, and I concur with you, that there's always a risk that the more digital we go, the bigger the risk is that something can happen, that government can be hacked or whatever have you. But maybe that's something that we can organize a session where that's better explained about what measures are being taken to ensure that how as we grow, there are measures that's taken also to ensure that the right level of protection is there. I do believe it's even wiser to just do a joint type of presentation with the Executive Council and the Island Council, that everybody has a better understanding about the risk, but then also what's being done to mitigate risk. The government
that's my portfolio, digitalization, and there are things being done so that would be
it was both the financial part, I said what financial part.
So there are steps being taken, and measures are being taken. For example, now we have more than 2-factor verification for certain things to log in. If you use your laptop or whatever outside of the building, or even in the building, after so many hours, you have to put in a code as well. So those things are being done behind the scenes. There's obviously a company, we have a company hired that checks in case of people trying to hack in. So that is something part of the entire digitalization. But presentation can be given to give more information what and how this is being done. We also, warn colleagues not to download or click on certain links, phishing scams and all that. So there are things being done, but we can provide more information to the council on that. The enforcement capacity, because of the current and anticipated pressure on the enforcement capacity, it was proactively decided to expand the enforcement capacity. This does not only relate to the expanded roles, but also to the current responsibilities. This extra capacity would also allow the training of new and existing employees without diminishing our existing capacity for longer periods of time when persons are being trained. So the new enforcers will have to pass a general basketball training, that's what the others have to do as well, and an examination of supervision and enforcement. These examinations are organized in the region together with the public entity Bonaire and the public entity Central Stations. Refresher courses and new courses to expand on the basic training that all enforcers have enjoyed are being investigated. Specific training for new enforcement tasks that would demand significant new expertise will be organized when required. No specific training programs of that nature are planned as yet, as how to and to what extent expected new tasks will be allocated is still unclear. As for example, the ones from the they have the ones. So some of those like when we were in Amalan, when they explain they have to bring expertise from the mainland, the islands, and the Netherlands to do those supervisions. So that's also what we were talking about with the 3 islands when there's station Saba. So maybe certain expertise would be up on here, and then Saba station could buy into that and have those enforcement officials come to check on those certain things. So those are things that we have explored as well.
Thank you. The next questions.
With regards to public transportation and how that plan will be rolled out, if exact numbers, if you want to see those, how the money is going to be provided, I can provide that later on. But the goal is that we start with a rollout during the course of 2024, but then of course accomplish more in 2025. So the idea is to build upon it because there is limited funds available. I believe it's 166,000 per year. So the goal by 2025 is to construct 2 bus stops, to have 2 public transport vehicles in service, to hire an additional driver because there's one person that already does it, and then of course optimize the schedule, especially when we have the 2 buses in service, to see what best meets the needs of the passengers traveling on the buses. In the end, it should be there to benefit people, and as such it has to be modified. It's a living type system, but then also a living schedule that there should be flexibility. But if you would like to see an idea of how the numbers will be divided, that's something that can be provided later on. As for the overview of personal expenses, indeed, the governor wants to answer that. So.
Personality.
I was going to give an answer of how it compares to the whole financial scheme. No, you go ahead.
Everybody taking ownership.
Balls in your court, Mr. Governor.
You also have the opportunity to have the governor.
Well, it's personality to me, so okay. So the all positions are sent to the are sent for financial advice to the finance department prior to any vacancy being published. And these also need to be approved by the executive council before they are published. And personnel growth is based on growth within the organization and an increase in tasks and responsibilities. Vacancies are not posted without the financial means being available. I think the commissioner can also give more information about the current situation and how much of our personnel costs are in relation to the entire budget.
I think you gave a good answer. No, but in general, it does seem that you hear also outside the confines of this building that so many people are being hired. But that's also a reality if I look at, what the budget was in 2007 to what the budget is, here now in 2024. It has, easily tripled, if not more. So with that, comes more responsibilities. The funding that we get from the Netherlands also require very rigorous reporting. So with that, you need a necessary support to ensure that that criteria can be met, not only met, but that we can sustain it. And I believe the news of today with the harbor project, had we not been able to maintain that level, that news would not have been a reality today. So it is important to have the right people in the right places to ensure continuity, but also to keep Saba's level of financial management or level of reporting at the level that it is right now. But there is also a mechanism that is in place right now when it concerns vacancies. Not only is there a need for budget, but then there has to be a very transparent process that has to be communicated to the race taking word for. It's not to say that we can just hire somebody without a vacancy, without a standard procedure of interviews, because all of that is checked. So before everything is finalized, you have to get that letter saying that the process has been transparent, has been thorough, and that green light is given. So there is a control mechanism there that ensures that persons aren't just being hired when there's no money. And to add to that about the money part of it, that's always a concern that I have. Sometimes I say I have an expression that isn't well received within certain groups of the government. I say sometimes less is more. And maybe I understate that when I say that less is more, because you do need people to ensure that the work is done. But I also wear the cap of ensuring that we have sufficient means to cover the expenses that that we expect. And if you keep increasing personnel costs, that comes at a risk that you're not able to also fulfill your legal obligations. So that's something that we always think about when making decisions about things like vacancies, and also with balancing the budget.
Thank you, Commissioner and Governor, for your responses. I don't have any follow-up questions, but I will now give my colleagues the opportunity if they would have a follow-up question based on their responses. You can go.
No, it was just a clarification from the governor about the new enforcers. Are you stating that this is being explored, or are there going to be an opportunity for getting new members? Then maybe I misunderstood.
I think it is decided to expand it, so I think that will go to the...
Yeah, in the budget.
That's in the draft.
Yeah.
That's in the draft budget 25 to expand.
Okay. So then, that would then conclude the discussion agenda point for the draft multi-annual budget 2025 to 2028. There will be a next opportunity again during the next Central Committee meeting for us to address any questions or concerns pertaining to the budget. And with this, we will come to the last agenda point, which is the closing. So at this time, I would like to thank you all for joining the Central Committee meeting of today, September 17th, 2024. And I look forward to all of you joining us on the next meeting, which is the Island Council meeting of Thursday, September 19th, 2024, starting at 2 p.m. So thank you again for joining us, and have a pleasant day for your meeting closing.